Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Power of Women in Insurance podcast. My name is Teresa Kitchens, your host, and I am thrilled today because I have Amy Drewel with me, and she is a amazing agency owner. And you know what? She has a great background in HR. She runs an amazing agency. She has a great team. I've seen her on the stage at multiple different conferences, and every single time she brings it. So today we are here talking to Amy. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, Amy, I am really pumped because, like I said, I know a lot about you, your background, kind of what you've been doing. But why don't you tell the group a little bit about you, how you kind of found yourself in this position in insurance a little bit, and how long you've been doing it?
Perfect. So great. I used to be an HR manager and it was for a large tech firm. And back in 2005, I was speaking at an HR conference, and that happened to be when American Family came to Washington State. And
Okay.
so after I spoke, they pulled me aside and asked if I wanted to leave the HR field and open a business in my local community, to which I said, tell me more. And about 6 months later, hired on as one of their Wave 1 agents for the state of Washington. So I went from HR to insurance, had a great opportunity there at American Family, but about the almost fifth year, I said, you know what? Gosh, I want to have more for my clients and be able to offer more markets. I want a little more control over being able to do actual HR work and manage my own team and less of the corporate feel. So I, with another agent, started Mosaic Insurance back in 2010. We have offices in 7 states. We're about $20 million in premium and 52 total people. So
Oh,
yeah, that's kind of my background. So
52. That's a
yeah,
lot to manage. Wow.
yeah, and I will tell you, I think the only reason I'm able to, I think, manage it is my HR background. I
Yeah.
think having that HR background really allowed me to put some systems into place and the hiring, the training, the termination, teams, that type of stuff. So
Yeah. Well, I know hiring is one of the biggest challenges of being a business owner. I think a lot of people go into, especially agency ownership, from a situation kind of like what you're talking about, where they were very successful, maybe in a captive environment or even with an independent agency, and they feel like they can do it either better or they can do it more or they can do it in a way that benefits them. But then whenever they get in there, all of a sudden they realize they're just swamped. They realize all the meetings you got to have with all the carrier reps and all the reporting and all the this, that, and the other. So then we hire, and then all of a sudden we're adding in the challenges of payroll, the challenges of managing that person, training them, making sure that, we're documenting everything the way that we need to make sure that we're compliant with everything. And I think people really don't like that people management part of the whole navigation of ownership. I think they're very surprised about that when they get it. What do you see whenever, because I know you speak at lots of stages and you've met so many agency owners. How do you feel like that conversation has gone with agency owners that you've been able to have with them?
yeah, so I think it's a really good question. And as you're talking, the one thing that like really stands out to me is the number one obstacle that I see that a lot of agents struggle with is leaving that agent position and working on the business, not in the business.
Yeah.
And we opened again in 2010. I have not quoted or issued a policy since we opened our doors.
Oh, nice.
So I don't, right? So my goal was to hire people that I could train to be better than me
Yep.
and be Amy, the face of Mosaic. So I think most agents, until they can switch their mindset,
Mhm.
that it's okay to step out of that quoting and issuing role and be able to relinquish some of that to somebody else in the office. That's just a big hurdle. I think once you can do that, it's okay to still be involved and do all of that, but you need to make sure that your team member understands that you trust them to do the same job at the same level that you are currently doing. I think as far as hiring teams, I think one of the best things we can do for ourselves that costs zero money really is that when we're out there networking and we're talking to people, always talk about your team. Always talk about
Mhm.
how amazing they are, mention who they are, and this builds two different things. First and foremost, when your networking partners become your clients, they're not going to be surprised that you say, "Hey, I'm going to, assign so and so to you." They're going to be able to give you, shop the markets, whatever. So they're not going to be, they're going to be like, "Oh, Amy's talked about this amazing team she has." The second thing it does for you is the more you talk about your team, it puts those feelers out there, the kind of people you're looking for. And then when somebody might be on the fence and maybe doing a career change, or they might know somebody that is, they'll think, oh, man, that woman talks about her team like they are the best of the best. I want to be a part of that. I want to be in a positive culture. I want to be somewhere where I'm appreciated, where my boss talks good about me, you know? And so I think that that's one thing we can do in looking for talent, is to really just put yourself out there. It advertises your agency, but it also starts to keep that pipeline full. So like then let's say you do put the feelers out there, people know a little about your team. They know who
Yeah.
you are, right?
I always say always be hiring, right?
Always.
Because you need to make sure you keep that door open, right? Because you never know when that best next person is going to be able to join your team. And it's not always when you're looking. It could be, you're just getting to that point and this person just falls into your lap. And I've heard that a ton of times, is that somebody puts out a feeler and they're really positive about their team, or people are like, oh my gosh, I really want to work for them because I've met people at networking groups, or, something, not necessarily like events that maybe your team helps to host. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's a great team. Or I've called and I've referred business and those people were really happy. So then they want to be a part of your team because they're looking for a positive. I think that's one of the things we're seeing right now in small businesses, is that especially in insurance, everybody's stressed and everybody's tired and everybody's overwhelmed. So then the concept of a positive, happy work environment where they're appreciated is almost like, wow, that could be something I could have, because maybe their
Absolutely.
current owner is stressed and tired and exhausted and cranky, or maybe they have an absentee owner that's trying to say, well, our numbers aren't where they need to be, or da 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 da, and then they feel captive in that space and they don't feel like they're free to be able to do what they've been really trained to do.
Absolutely. And and people talk, right? So like you might have a client who's even looking for work, and they might hear it in their account manager's voice how much they love their job, or they might get to have a relationship, and then next thing you know, we're getting a referral from a client who's looking for
Yep.
work. And you're exactly right. Keeping that pipeline of future team members full, at least with one or two people, is super important. And I think especially what's going on right now in the marketplace, it's pretty disrupted. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I've had some team members who just said, I can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
Totally get it. Mental health is way more important
Oh yeah.
than them working for me. I'd rather have them get their mental health correct. So will they be back? Hopefully, but who knows? But I will say that in this environment, having a funnel of people that want to work is going to be very important. And the best thing you can do is keep a positive, like you're saying, is a positive team atmosphere, right? So, and when you hire for the team, you want to make sure that they're a good fit for the team, right? So when I do hire, I always have somebody from the team interview the person as well, just to make sure they feel. And that also gives the person who's interviewing the opportunity to ask a question about me if they want to, or about, hey, what's it really like over there? Is this really what the job is like? Just so they can hear from somebody else. And I'm not part of that interview. But and sorry, I know I just derailed from that. But if you haven't noticed,
No, but I think that's really important, because when people hear from other team members, it's social proof, right? That this is a good place to work. Now, granted, there's always okay, they're obviously high enough in the food
yeah,
chain. They're here to be able to do the interview. But I mean, I definitely think that gives a lot of like social cred and social proof in the interview process, that this is a place where I can thrive and I can really be really good, because it's not just about management, is that the people are involved and they're also seeing that you're letting the team take ownership and leadership, which is what a lot of people want. And I find that a lot of agencies keep their team on such a tight leash sometimes, that they don't allow the people to either step up or to have that freedom. Or, when people are like, oh, what about more technology? And an agency owner might be like, no, we do things the way we've already done them always. And I think a lot of people, when they see that your team is super involved, even in the hiring process, they know that investment's there. And then they know their investment's going to be valued as well.
absolutely. And I always hope when they do the interview that my team, whoever is doing the interviewing, will say, you know what, Mosaic is a transparent office space. If you think that something can be done differently and you've done it a way before with your prior agency, management is completely willing to listen to how things might be done a little bit differently that can benefit the entire agency. Super important, right? And I think that when you're a manager or an agency owner, whether you have a small agency or a large agency, you should want team members that are smarter than you, right? You want to be able to develop leaders. Now, everybody's idea of the word leader is different, right? So my idea of leader could be what I'm doing now. Somebody else on the team might not want to do public speaking. They might not want to ever own a business, but you know what? They want to be a leader in what they do. They want
Right.
to be the best account manager that they can be. They want to handle all the VIP clients. They want the large accounts. That's their idea of leader. And so you have to get to know each person and see
Yep.
what their passion, what their definition of leader is, and then you aim towards that, right? Because in the end, it's a win-win for everybody. They're happy. Their paycheck makes them happier. Mosaic, my agency, is happier, which means I'm happier, right? So it's just really getting to know and treat your team like they are family.
Yeah.
You treat them how you want to be treated, and you train them. You take the time to train. I mean, that is the number one important thing to me, is communication and training. If you're
Yes.
going to be making a change in your agency and you need to train on it, the very first thing you should do, in my opinion, is tell them why you're making this change and what the outcome, why it's a benefit to them and or the client or agency. If you
Yeah.
just tell them, hey, we're doing things this way now, that's a tough sell, right? The less time they'll bite on that. If you can tell them and message it correctly, the buy-in is already halfway there, right? And so that training piece is so important. And in the market, the way that it is right now, I know a number of agencies, us included, we're doing things a little bit differently.
Yep.
So when we were focusing more about asking for referrals, new business, new business, new business, now we're like, man, we are going to really try to push clients to do those reviews with us, to do those account reviews. Like, we would reach out 2 or 3 times, just say, hey, contact us. But now we're like, here's why you need to contact us. Here's what you need to know. So we're pivoting things, right? That all takes training. Just
Mm.
because somebody's been doing the same job for 8, 9 years doesn't mean that they know how to do now what you're hoping that they do. So no matter how seasoned an individual is, make sure to give them all the same training, especially when the marketplace is going on right now.
Yeah, yeah. And what I think we forget is sometimes when we get in ownership, we get so focused on our business, we forget the reasons why we went out on our own to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe we would have been in that situation where we wanted to do things differently. So we go on out and we start these agencies, and then we become one of those people who don't let people, feed back into the conversation. And
Oh,
we
yeah.
the way that what it was. So then we just perpetrate the same challenge, in the industry. And I really just challenge the people listening to say, how can I build a better team? Because as we are in this hard market, I know we've been here now for a year and a half or 2 years ish, because it kind of, we saw it coming at, during COVID. A couple of us said, with all the rebates and the refund checks and all that during the hot end of COVID, we knew something was going to happen, right? There was that huge conversation with, this is not going to go well in 2 years, and it
Yeah.
hasn't. Claims are up, accidents are up, all sorts of things, right? But on the opposite side of that conversation, I think we need to vision forward. This market will never look the same, even if we come out of a hard market. And for those of you not on you don't see the video, whatever, I mean, YouTube, here's my air quotes, right? So for those of us who are in this hard market, it's never going to be the same. When we talk about leaving this hard market, let's not think it's going back where it was, because it will not. It will be a completely different market. So Amy, how are you preparing your team to move forward in the next set of the hard market with the things that we don't know really what's going to happen? I know I'm in Texas, you're in Washington. We're already seeing most of our homeowners deductibles going up to 2%. We're seeing some of them go up to 3%. Some of them at 5. Hippo's at 5 down here in Texas percent of the home dwelling. We're seeing harder underwriting guidelines. We're seeing they don't want homes or roofs of a certain age. We're seeing that we have to be able to verify and document, whether or not, I mean, just crazy stuff. I mean, it's just crazy right now. But how are you equipping your team, not only for the challenge that we're in now, but for the agency of tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I think there's a couple different ways to answer this and how we're doing this. So first and foremost, very transparent. So yes, this market got hard probably end of 2021.
Yeah.
And the projections that we see, and I do meet with a lot of the carriers in the C-level suite, and I think what most carriers are saying is that through 2024, maybe quarter 2 of 2025, until things settle down. But you're right, it'll never be the same, We will not go back to what we thought was the insurance landscape. So I'm always transparent with my team. So in the past, let's talk about rate. We take like those little increases, right? Now we're looking at 40% over the next year as what most carriers need. They need a lot more than that, but are going to be taking, right? And so transparency of, hey, here's what's going on in the marketplace. This is why it's happening. Very transparent, right? I break it down into very elementary terms. They can understand it, but the reason we talk about elementary terms is that they can have good conversations with our clients. Absolutely on the ground level conversations that a third grader would be able to understand, because insurance is hard for people. It's not, if you're not in it every day, all day, you don't get the acronyms. You don't understand, percentage deductible or this or that. Like, so we talk about it in very like transparent terms. Technology is another thing we're doing. So technology, what can I take off my team's plate that would help them in the future, where they can spend more of their dedicated time having these conversations with the clients as to why their rate went up, why it doesn't make sense for them to move carriers right now, why it makes sense for them to stay. So technology. So is there a better pipeline program I could be using, or can I adjust a pipeline program for new business that I'm currently using? Our renewal program, can I adjust the way we send out our automated campaigns? Do I need to give them more days? So, which we did. I asked the team was like, man, I love to have 30 days prior notice to the other 30 days we had, so that I could prep for things and manage my time. They can't get quotes in the system because we're too far out, but they can manage their time, right? So technology, what can we do for that? I did hire some virtual assistants to be able to do some of the background work of things that aren't client facing or require them to be licensed, but mainly data entry, help filling in accord forms, that type of stuff. I did also hire a customer care specialist, a CCS, where she is at the beck and call basically of our account managers. And if they need help, like, hey, please send out an motor vehicle card, just the things that aren't necessarily revenue driven or retaining revenue, but just some of the administrative type items, hired for that. I have let them know it's okay to have the hard conversations with clients.
Yeah.
And it's okay to lose a client in this market. It is okay to fire a client in this market. It's especially now, and I'm very thankful that we over the years have been a little bit picky on who we put with what carrier, because we do have carriers now who are canceling people at renewal time for an accident they had 3 years ago.
Yeah.
This is unprecedented. We've never done this before, really, right?
And somebody was canceled. They actually renew tomorrow from a claim from 2020. Like, we got a commercial, but it was 5 years lost runs. And I was looking through the last 2 or 3 years, I was going, where's this claim they're canceling for? And we had to go back to 2020.
Yeah. So
we were like, why are they canceling now?
Yeah. So carriers are going back 5 years, right? And so arming our teams with the right verbiage to be able to say, hey, most accidents happen in your first policy term. Yep. Carriers are now going back 3 to 5 years and canceling for clients for claims and even driving activity. So you need to stay where you're currently at. You need to stay with the carrier that you're currently with, and here is why. So we've been able to have those conversations because we think we put the right clients with the right carriers. But for the ones that aren't, it's okay to be able to let those clients go. They might go to a captive market. That's fine. You treat them with respect. You educate them. They'll be back. Yep. They will absolutely be back, right? Yep. So I think it's just making sure that your team is aware of what's going on, and that requires you to be very transparent. It requires you to be transparent as far as the commission levels too, and that's in my own opinion. This is why we multi-line package things. Yep. This is why this carrier now is requiring you to do multi-lines together. Yep. We have carriers, by the way, that are canceling for not having multi-lines, right? So this all creates more workload for our teams. So it's being that transparent. It is, making sure that they understand that, man, maybe we don't place a lot with this carrier over here because they've cut their commission down by 5%, which when you're getting 15%, now it's 10, that's a third of your pay. That's a third of what the agency made from that carrier. That's 5%. Yeah, it's huge. And so, and I think we have to say the numbers like that when we're talking to our team, because while only you think it's only 5%, but when you get 15%, 5% is a third. That's a lot, and that adds up, right? And
Especially
they
when you talk
understand
about across the board, right? Like your entire
totally.
book. It's not just that one policy. And this one policy, it might be $15, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's one conversation. But when it's $15 times,
Yeah.
800 people,
Yeah.
that's a totally different conversation.
It's huge, right? I mean, that's a position in the agency, right? And so it's when we look at that, it's having those hard conversations. And I think that no matter what industry you're in, when you can give knowledge to somebody to fully prepare them to be the best they can be in their position, you win. And so it doesn't behoove us to keep things back like that from our staff. And it's also the good conversations of, but if that is the only market that they have access to, then absolutely put them with that carrier.
Yeah. Keeping the
Absolutely.
client is more important than losing them, but we want to put
Correct.
it in the right place for all of us, right? I mean, if
Right.
that's where they need to be, then that's fine. We can move them in a year to 2 years, but we don't want to lose.
Absolutely. No, and I think your team you start to gain more respect with your team when you are transparent.
Yeah.
And because I think in this market, I don't know about we're in Washington State. We don't operate in Texas for many reasons. So
For many reasons.
yeah,
Right?
but I don't know about you, but we get changes on a
I'm kind of like stuck.
yeah, but we get changes on a daily basis, whether it be underwriting changes, commission changes, eligibility changes, whatever it might be. So let all that noise and fuss happen all day, every day, but you have got to stay the ground, be transparent on the larger picture of things. And then when they get those messages, they can piecemeal it into the silos of where it fits into the larger picture of items that are going on. So I think that for us, for the next 18 months to 2 years, it's just keeping the pace with the transparency, the monitoring, right? Because your teams are getting burnt out, whether you notice it or not. They're getting burnt out. To have a team member 3 years ago service a book worth 1.5, that I have my best team members that can barely right now have the time to service a $1 million book of business. And it's for the mere fact of you're not using a PL rater because carriers have taken themselves off. You're going to every carrier. You have every client is calling now because of the large increases. It's not just
You're
the
on the
few
phone twice as much. You got twice as many emails.
True, right. You have carriers canceling people for a claim that happened 4 years ago. The client's so confused how come they didn't cancel in the last 3 years, but now they are. You have people that are calling you for a quote that want you to shop them, but they're calling you because either took a huge increase or they were canceled. Good luck finding a place for a canceled client. I mean, it's just your team has taken on a lot more than they used to. So for you and your team to get through this, you need to make sure that you're understanding their workload now and that it has definitely changed over the last 18 months. And if they had a book of business that they could service back then, now them servicing it, they're going to need help. So look at technology, look at maybe hiring a virtual assistant or somebody else who could help them. And I've hired somebody from the local community college, and all she did was scanning and data entry for us. It was great, right? But I think that if you don't start looking at these things, your best is going to be burnt out. We are also, after the new year, going to a 4-10 work schedule. And I'm doing that to allow people either a long weekend, or I have a team member who's like, I want Wednesday off. I want to work 2 days, have a day off, work 2 days, have 2 days off. She said, I want to do that. But it'll allow our team members to be off the phone during the open hours where they can reach the carriers on the front end and the back end of their workday. And so they're all looking forward to that. I'm hoping that'll help a little bit of
So define a 4-10, 4 days a week.
Yeah. So there'll be 4 days a week, depending on what they want to do, either like 7 to 6 or whatever. So
okay,
they
were 10 hours,
yeah,
4 days a week. And
yeah, so they would work 10 hours.
I figured, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. So
yeah, so they'll work, and every state has different laws. We have to allow them their breaks and everything. So a lot of them will say, I'll just work through my lunch. We can't, right? So I have one team member who wants to do 9.5-hour days and get a half day off every Friday. So we'll juggle it, which makes sense, right? So we'll juggle it to the point where that can happen, or she'll do 9.5 hour days and get every other Friday off. But here nor there, pragmatics. But there's different ways to look at it. But that was my team's idea. They were like, they kept on saying, can you block me off 2 hours a day? I don't want to be on phones. I need time to call the carriers, because business owners, if you don't know this, what took carriers 24 hours to get back to you now is taking them 4 to 7 days. And by the way, the hold time is 45 minutes to an hour and a half.
Yep.
And when you have your team where you really press on them that good customer service is what retains the clients, they want to talk to the clients, but they are spent their time on hold with the carriers, right? So when the team kept on saying, can we have some time just be off the phone? So I was like, great, we can make that happen, but how else can that, we can do that continually on a daily basis for everybody. So going to a 410 is what we're looking to do after the new year as well. In hopes that that'll just maybe a help with the time constraint, but also make them happier where they're having a day off.
Well, but also I think people get stressed because we're working on something and then all of a sudden the phone rings, we got to answer the phone. And then all of a sudden we're juggling two different things. And where was I with this? And now I've got to do this with this. And that's actually one thing we've done, except we've done it a little bit differently. And just to be able to let the listeners have a little bit of a different different concept. And I have a team of 10, so I don't have a team that is large of a team. Is that we have an account manager assigned to, we have two account managers assigned to the morning to be primary on the phone, 2 in the afternoon, primary on the phone. And then on Fridays, our VAs are primary on the phone, just because we have two really good, great VAs that are really been with me for 7 years. They really know what they're doing and they know where and how to be able to pass off those conversations. And the clients know them, right? Like they've had enough exposure at this point. If they answer the phone, it's great. Some people are like, no, I cannot have my VAs answer the phone. So take the fact of all of that into consideration. I'm not just throwing any VA in there. I have some that I do not allow to be able to answer the phones, but that has allowed our team to have that heads down time that they can make those phone calls. They can devote to their emails. They can work their suspense tasks. They can do what they need to do. And they don't feel like they're constantly behind. And that we did that. We went to that about 3 weeks ago. And I got to say, we've had a better, it's really funny. I went out for dinner with my husband last night and he just looked at me and he goes, you seem like you look peppier today. Number one, I've had a little bit of drama recently, but outside of work, but he was like, you look a little happier today. I was like, I feel like today is the first day I feel like we're really doing well. That I don't feel like the team is stressed. I didn't feel like we were laughing, and we're on Zoom all day long. So we're pretty much a virtual agency. I have an office, as you can see, but I'm never in it except for one day a week. But the key is for me is that I see them on Zoom. We're talking, we're muting ourselves, we're working, we're sharing our screen. But now they have time to devote to the fact that they can get their work done. And that has changed I'm going to call it the happy culture of the like we're laughing again. And I got to say, we were not laughing for a long time.
Yeah, no, Teresa, you hit on the head. It's like, you have to gauge that, right? Like when you say the whole happy factor, it's like, so we meet weekly as well. And it is the happy factor, right? Like you can see it in their faces when they're overwhelmed or they're talking about something. We also use Teams instant message. So during the day, and mainly because the carriers have so many changes going on. So somebody be like, hey, I just learned this, and it's impossible to keep up with them all right now. But you're exactly right. So like for us, when you talk about having a virtual assistant or a VA, we have one that helps us answer phones. And so, and she's been with us almost 3.5, 4 years now. So Rudy's amazing, but she helps us save time because she also monitors the people that are looking for a quote.
Yep.
Again, from the online quotes that come in, people are looking because they've been canceled by a carrier or their rates went up because of activity or the marketplace, but substantially went up because they have activity or claims, right? And so we developed a new process where our first thing for those internet leads, if they're not referrals or somebody that we know is coming to us, is we then put them into an automated campaign where they are sent basically a quote sheet. Because we figure if they're going to fill out a quote sheet, they're serious about getting a quote from us.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have an account manager contact that person and waste their time, which they don't have right now, just to be playing the voicemail game or have that person have all these tickets and accidents and we know we can't help them. And so we've tried to help the team with that. That has put the smile back on some of their faces because they're like, oh, thank gosh, I thought I was letting you down by not getting back these 6 leads I got today, but I don't have time and after my calls, because they had a major accident or they've had 2 water claims on their home, and so with the help of my team, I got onto job forms in one of our meetings, and I said, okay, our quote sheet says this, which things are super important to weed out who we know we can't help right now, because we will send that out to these internet leads that are coming in, and if they fill it out, then we'll respond to them. But if they don't fill it out, we're not going to waste our time. So we've tried to do something like that. I will say, for all the agencies that are able to pivot and be fluid through this, man, when we come out the other side, while it'll be a different workspace, we will have learned a lot. Our teams will be stronger. It will be set up for much further success in the future. And that's the important part, right? While we're getting back to basics on some things, like really trying to get our clients to do account reviews at renewal and not have it be so automated for that, we are adding automation. So why you think they would do this, it's picking the right things to be automated and the right things to be people face to face. And I think that it's trial and error. Everybody's book of business is different. But I think if those two can be married together, I think there's definitely space in that environment for them both to work and work in conjunction with each other. And I think when this is all said and done and end of 2025, we'll be in a better place.
I think, I totally agree. And I think one of the things I'm hearing, and I just want to make sure I repeat, because, sometimes as we listen to these things, to be able to repeat them really goes a long way, but it's all about listening to your team and asking the questions that help them and you to be able to level up and be able to operate on a more efficient, better scale, explaining why we're doing what we're doing and being transparent. But all of that is culture, it's communication, it's being transparent, it's asking the questions. And then here's the big catcher, listening to the answers. And then I think maybe people feel heard, right? Is saying, I hear you say this. So right now, why don't we say, right now, I feel like this quarter, we've got a lot on our plate. So let's take what we're working and let's take this and let's move this to next month. But let's look at that maybe for the next quarter, because we want to be prepared for that conversation for, say, Q1 or Q2, whatever. So maybe we can't do it today, but give people the knowledge that they're being heard and that they're important, right? And that we can't solve the world's problems in 24 hours. So everything they bring to the table may not be implemented today or tomorrow, but at the same point, it might be implemented, in 3 months. But the conversation, as it grows, and then maybe somebody else has additional points to it, and maybe it can be implemented in a way. But that's about listening. That's about not just asking the questions because we're supposed to, but also active listening. And there's passive listening and active listening, right? Passive listening is just kind of that wah, 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 wah. We hear, but we don't really know. And then there's the connecting, the understanding, and the not running over people and not ignoring them. And it's really internalizing, and it's really talking to them about these things. And I think we as agency owners need to really dive deep into those skills that we need to develop if we haven't already.
Well, I will tell you, you hit the nail on the head, because the reality is this. I personally don't know how an agent or an agency owner can be successful right now with their agency and their team if they're not listening. And I say that because your team is in the trenches all day, every day. They hear what the clients are telling them, right? So let's start with the client. The client we're the go-between between the carrier and the client. How the carrier delivers the price increase, from the declaration pages, right? So the clients are telling our team how they feel, how they're feeling right now. So A, ask your team that, like, what are you hearing from the client? Yep. B, they're the ones that are trying to quote with these carriers. They're the ones that are trying their best to look for business. Their clients are being canceled, whatever the case may be. If you're not doing that all day, every day, you need to make sure you ask your team what is going on, because if you don't, you're going to have no grasp. Because I'll be honest, the announcements we get from the carriers are very general. You don't know how they affect you unless you talk to your team about how things are going. If you don't talk to them, you can't make changes. Right now requires an agency to make changes. If you're doing business the same way you were doing it 3 years ago, I don't know how you're going to look in 2025 or 2026, right? The best way to make your changes is to ask your team what is going on and to stop and to listen. And then when they are done talking, you regurgitate how or what you heard so that they can either validate what you heard is correct, or they can correct you and be like, no, what I meant to say was this, or no, this is also going on, right? Then from that, your team relies on you to take that information and do something with it. So if your team is telling you how overwhelmed they are and that they wish they had this or they wish this, you need to make action on that. Don't just ask how things are going and leave it at that. I mean, you need to implement or look at ideas. So what we'll do is we'll do that. Then I'll come back with, hey, because I'll talk to other agents like yourself and say, hey, what are you doing for this? Or what are your thoughts on this? I'll go back to the team and say, hey, here's what other agencies are doing. What do you think would be a good fit for us? Yep. Then they let me know. They might narrow it down or say, oh, that's awesome. Then I'll put more work into it. Don't spend your time building a whole new system, right, until you get a little bit of buy-in from your team. And by the way, when you get buy-in from your team and then you present the new thing that you did and ask for their tweaks of it, they're going to be the first people to use it and think it's the most amazing thing in the world, right? So it is listening and then taking what you've heard and acting upon it.
And also, I think realizing you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just because somebody says, hey, we want help in this arena, maybe we can find a way to do it without having to go subscribe to a new system or go like reinvent the entire process. Maybe we can add a step in the process, right? Or take out a step in the process if it's too cumbersome, right? Or you can delegate a couple steps of the process. The process is still the process, right? But maybe you can delegate this portion of the process. So listening to the core of what's wrong, and then thinking about your processes and how things work, and then trying to be able to solve that problem rather than jumping on some board of new technology or whatever, then getting exhausted because we can't implement it. And then everybody's like, we have too many things going too many different directions. If we can really simultaneously work on efficiency, I think it's going to make our time for our team members better, our time for our clients better turnarounds. And it's also going to turn around and make sure that we maximize what we already have.
Yeah, and
I think that's really big because I know people feel like listening to our team means something that we got to go change. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could be one minor tweak or one minor thing that we need to just tweak a little bit.
Well, and you make a really good point. And before we get off this phone call, vendors, right? So vendors are changing right now too. They understand the landscape and they're like, oh crap, we've got to do a little bit of pivoting ourselves in order for agents to want to continue to use us, because there are other vendors who are starting out there who are like, hey, the agents want this and we're going to do it like this. So your agency management system, any kind of like automation that you are using, first and foremost, check there if they have capabilities of doing that, because I was shocked at the capabilities ours had that I had no clue, because I used it the same way for so many years. And I was like, this is a miracle, right?
What is and I'm not a huge person for statistics, but I think statistically, like most agencies only use like 30% of their management systems, something like that, or 20%.
Oh God, I wish it was 20%. I mean, I felt like I was using like 10. Are you kidding me?
Right. And yet we go on out, we subscribe to this and we subscribe to that. And use what you got and learn it.
Totally. And then also we've had some of our vendors that I'll call them, I'll have a discussion, be like, hey, what would it take to be able to do this? And they're like, a lot of you agents have been asking to do that. So then all of a sudden they're taking our ideas and they're learning from us. They're listening, right? That's the cue. So now you're stepping into your team member's role and the vendor's listening to you. So now put yourself in that position and say, great, I would love the vendor to be able to do this.
Yep.
Right? So that whole listening thing goes both ways. And so now we have one of our vendors does something exactly that we need, but it's only because agents went to them. Like you as a business owner, you only know what your team tells you. Our vendors only know what we tell them. So do the industry a favor and yourself a favor and go to your vendors if it's not available and say, hey, I really think it'd be a good fit for this program. Do you have the capabilities of doing this, and what would that entail? And then they'll make you a beta agency, and then it'll be great.
Yeah. Absolutely. But ask for what you want. Allow your team to ask for what they want, and then listen. and make sure that we make these. And I always say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And there's a great graphic out there that I love that is an elephant, and it's like one person's got the tail and he's like, hey, this is a really crazy rope, and one person's looking at the body of an elephant and it's just like this big gray slab of wall, right? Somebody else is down below and they're like, oh, look at this archway to enter into this other, but looking at an elephant from different perspectives, you don't see the whole elephant, right? And so what we need to do is take a step back from our agencies, listen to our team, watch the operations, and really be attentive, because we will not be in the same culture in insurance in the next year to 2 years or 3 years or 5 years that we are today. And it's going to take that 360 perspective with our team, our operations, and listening to our clients and our team and our management and all of it to really be able to survive what's coming and be able to really thrive in what's coming.
Absolutely. And I will just kind of end that thought with, we're all going to be changing, but I know for me, I want the same team that I started this with to be there when we come to the other end. My clients deserve to have the same team.
Yep.
They deserve to have people that they've been working with over the past couple of years. Whatever I can do to keep those clients and keep my team members, I'm going to do. And I don't mean monetarily. I mean, I think everybody thinks just throwing money at people. There are people that get paid a lot of money that leave positions because they aren't happy and they feel unheard.
Yep.
And if an agent wants their team to be intact at the end of this, the number one thing they can do is listen and make their team feel appreciated, and what they do matters, and that they add to this agency. And even though they might not be bringing in new business, that's okay, because they're retaining. And in this market, I did the numbers. It was 3.8 new clients it took to replace one client that left, based upon the amount of time it was taking our agency to reshop. Where you used to say you had 2 people for every client that left, now it's 3.8. Let's just round it to 4, because the amount of time it takes to quote somebody now is obscene.
Yeah.
And so retain our clients is what we are focused on. And again, retaining the team.
I love it. I love it. Well, I think this hopefully will be able to inspire people on how to be able to operate the next couple of years and really take a look at their team, listen, and be able to ask the right questions. And now they maybe hopefully know some questions to be able to ask, or at least some perspectives on that. So, Amy, if people want to reach out to you and want to be able to connect with you, what is a methodology with which you would recommend for them to do so?
Email's great. So my email is it's amy@mosaicia.com. I'm on Facebook. You can go to my agency Facebook page. You can find our website. You can dial. Voicemail's the last thing I listen to, so but I do. The phone's great too. I actually prefer Zoom meetings like this. So don't be surprised if you do reach out and I say, hey, let's do a Zoom instead of a phone call. So yeah, but email probably is the best way to get a hold of me.
I love it. I love it. Well, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and your team and your operations, because I know that you're busy. And I just want to say thank you so much for making yourself available to everybody and being able to share your knowledge. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me to be on this. I appreciate it.
Well, everybody, this has been another amazing episode of the Power Women in Insurance podcast. My name is Teresa Kitchens, your host, and we are thrilled to be able to talk to Amy Drewel today. And make sure that you check us out. We're on Apple iTunes, we're on Google Podcasts, we're everywhere, Spotify, that you want to be. So check us out. Make sure that you know that we do have a new episode every single Wednesday where we talk to an amazing member of the insurance space, and make sure that we are promoting and being able to help other women rise and thrive throughout the insurance space. Everybody, I'll see you next week.
Bye.